Hey everybody, my name's Darryl Bear. Welcome back to Journey to VR. So this week is part 2 of my presentation on image-based lighting workflows inside of Maya using Arnold. What I'm going to be showing you guys this week is how you can combine multiple spherical images or light probes into one high-quality texture map that we're then going to use to light objects in our synthetic scene. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thanks so much for taking the time to check it out. All right, here we are inside of Maya, and this is where we left off last week. What we're currently seeing is the reality captured environment being texture mapped by a high dynamic range spherical image. And that spherical image is being projected from the point of view of this green placement node. So this does a really great job of texture mapping the environment anywhere the camera had a view of the actual geometry. So obviously areas where the camera didn't have a view, it's going to have problems. It's going to be smearing across that. So what we did is we recorded several different spherical lighting probes, and what we want to do is make a shader or a layered texture that has the ability to transition between those so that we end up with one texture map that accurately covers a whole piece of geometry with high dynamic range imagery. So I'll go ahead and show you the end result, and then I'll walk you through the process of how we built that up. So this is what it looks like once you get that layered shader assigned to it. And basically each one of these projection nodes does a good job in a given range or a given region. So if we go ahead and we use the soloing function by clicking on the S here, we can isolate each one of these projections out to see where they look good. So obviously the green projection does a great job on the back, the wall, sort of that area. The red projection is going to cover off the staircases really nicely. Then obviously the blue projection is going to do a good job down there in the basement, in the roof of the basement, the ceiling of the basement. And then obviously this top projection is going to be the one that we'd want to use for the top of the environment. So what we end up with is a layered shader or a layered texture that goes through, and if we remove the soloing on this, builds up an environment that's got the appropriate texture map driven in each region that you would expect it to be. And that's done just by simply layering these guys on top of each other using the blend mode of over and just setting alpha channels up to transition between those. So how do you handle making those alpha channels? Well, I like to use texture maps to do that. And I actually like to paint a red, green, and blue file because that gives me the ability to get pure masks, 3 different masks as well as like a 4th mask where there would be no color. And it gives me one easy mechanism to generate where these textures are going to be applied. So how do you do that? Well, it's really straightforward. Let's go ahead and assign just a simple Lambert material to our piece of geometry. We'll go in here and we'll right mouse click on top of that guy and we'll say Paint 3D Paint. So with that done, we can bring up the tool settings and just go ahead and assign a new texture. So edit assign a texture, we'll make it be a 1K map. And then we can go through and just start painting pure color. So these are going to ultimately become my mask files for me. So we can paint a green where we want the first projection to show up. So it's a good idea to make sure your brush is set to not have any fall off. You want to get pure color there. And then obviously you'd make a mask for the blue or the red. So we'll do the red next. You kind of paint in that area like that. And then obviously, as it transitions down here into the basement, we'd want to go ahead and start to paint some blue. So the idea is, you basically go through, you paint these mask files. Oops, looks like I didn't get blue. So we'd want blue in the basement here. You paint these mask files, this red, green, blue map, and it's going to allow me to extract those and generate nice little alpha channels that we can use to transition our layer texture. And then you can use your shift key to kind of blur, or you could go here and grab a feathered brush and then use that to blur. So that's basically what I did. Now I've spent some time painting a map that's a little bit better that we're going to be using to build up our layer texture. But for all practical purposes, you say save texture, and then just like that, you're pretty much done with it. So let's go ahead and start to build up this layered shader using the map that I already previously generated. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we can blow this stuff away. Let's just create a surface shader. So we'll get this kind of surface shader in here and we'll assign that guy to this piece of geometry and we'll start building up our layered texture. So let's just graph the inputs outputs for that. So the first thing we're going to do is jump over to our browser, go to our textures, and we'll grab that alpha channel, that matte file that I generated before, that red, green, blue, and black file. And then we're going to use a layered texture. So if we jump back to our viewport, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just go to Other Textures and drag out a layered texture. With the layered texture dragged out, we're going to take the out color of that and drive it into the out color of our surface shader. So the reason I'm using the surface shader is because the texture maps have all the lighting information already in them and baked in them. So I'm just trying to get pure color by using that surface shader. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our first color swatch and we're going to map into it our green texture. So if we go to our projections and we find our green projection and drag that guy out onto it. If we jump back to our viewport now, you can see, we're basically back to where we started. We've got one projection node on our whole model. So what we want to do is we want to transition to this second projection node. So we're going to go back to our layered texture. We're going to create a new swatch for that guy. We'll make sure that swatch is highlighted. Jump back into the browser, and we're going to grab the, I think it's the red. We're going to grab the red and shove the red into that guy. So now if we jump back to the viewport, and we go back to our green projection and we start to drop that alpha channel down, you can see we're transitioning from one projection to the next projection. Now we want to use that mat file to generate the alpha channel, right? So all we're going to do is expand this out, expand out our inputs, and we're going to go to input 0, which is going to be our green input, and we're going to grab the out green and shove that into the alpha. So as soon as we do that, you can now see that we've got this guy covering everywhere there's green, and then we've got the second node in our layered shader covering everything else. Pretty straightforward, right? Very easy to do. So the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and create another layered swatch. So we'll grab that layered swatch, we'll highlight it, we'll jump back to our browser, and we're going to shove into that guy the blue. So let's say blue project, and we'll drop that over there. So now if we jump back into our viewport, what we've got is we've got the green, we've got the red, and there's nothing driving that alpha channel, and our blend mode is set to none. So we're going to put the blend mode to over, and then we need to pipe something into that alpha channel. So what do we want to do is we want to grab the red. So we'll expand out the second input, which is input number 1, and we'll grab the red alpha and shove that into the alpha. So now what we've got is we've obviously got this blue projection node down here doing the basement. We've got the green projection node doing this region, and we've got this red projection node doing the stairs. But you'll notice when I added in that blue, that third layer, we got some artifacting happening here. Now, why is that happening? Well, if we solo our red, green, blue map, you can see that there's transparent information happening here, right? Especially if we solo out the red, and you can highlight any of these outputs. If you double click on it, it's going to solo that output. So you can see that that red mask file that we're using to transition to the blue has this grayscale information kind of coming across it right here, and as well on this side. That's not what we want. We really do need a combination of what is green and what is red to be that matte file. We want to basically get a combo of those two guys. So you think, okay, that's pretty straightforward. How do I do that? How do I add those two guys together? Well, this is easy to do because we have all these cool utility nodes in here. So if we come down here and we do something like float math, and we drag out a float math node and we add these two guys together, you think this might solve the problem. It's going to help a little bit, but it's actually not going to totally solve the problem. So I'll show you the end result. If we just take that guy and that guy, we add those two guys together, and this now becomes our out float that drives that second alpha. So it changed it a little bit, but it didn't really give us the end result that we wanted. You can see if I solo that, there's still all this sort of grayscale information in there. So how are we going to fix that? Well, it's actually really easy to do because Maya has really cool utility nodes, float and logic nodes. So it's going to allow us to basically say, I want to generate a pure black and white map from my green channel. So if we solo this guy out right here and double click on that green to solo it out, I don't want white, black with, some variable change into gray. I want anywhere that there's any luminosity for it to become white. So if it's 0.001% luminosity or gray, I want it to be 100% white. So how do you do that? Well, you do that with a couple of these little condition nodes and a logic node. So we'll grab out a float logic node, very straightforward, and we'll grab out a float condition. So the logic is going to provide the switch, which is going to drive the condition. If you look at condition, it's got this little tumbler that's basically going to decide, am I A or am I B? And this logic basically lets you compare two different things and using various logic operators to drive a Boolean on, off, on, off. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab out our green file and we're going to shove that into float A, and we're going to say, compare that to black. And anywhere that it's true, you give me the positive Boolean. Anywhere it's false, you give me the negative Boolean. So we're going to take that switch, that counter that's running, and we're going to basically shove it into the condition slot for here. Now notice that condition isn't showing up. It shows up over here, but it's not showing up in my little graph. So all you have to do is click through this a few times or hit the 3 key on it. Would do also the same thing. It's going to show the default list of connections. So we're just going to take out Boolean and shove that into condition. And we'll basically make one of these
black or white. So basically we're running through, we're basically saying, look at the pixel, compare it to black. If it's not black, you're either going to be white or you're going to be on. So it's a very simple little switch, and that's going to give us pure black and pure white. So then if we take this guy and we substitute it down here into the output of this, into this guy's, we'll just tidy that up a little bit. We'll take the output of this now and have it drive that alpha. So as soon as we do that, if we solo this guy, you can see that it's pure black and pure white combined together. So that's pretty cool. But what we haven't done is we haven't added it into that red map. So what we're going to do is we're just going to repipe this guy a little bit, and we're going to replace this green input with the out of that guy. So now we've got red added together with green. So we'll just tidy this up a little bit. So it's kind of red added together. Here, we'll kind of go down like this. Red added together with green, and then the output of that is going to be the alpha channel. So the end result, if we solo this guy, is this really nice, pure white on the back side, but then this nice feathering effect happening on that side. So if we remove the soloing, you think it's going to work, but it's actually going to be a little messed up. So if you see something like this, what's happening is this float math is doing addition, and that alpha channel has been pushed over a value of 1. So it's kind of jacked it up a little bit and kind of messed it up a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add in a very simple clamp node to kind of clean that up. So if you're in here and you just click the tab key and start typing clamp, kind of click down with the arrow key and bring that guy in right there. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the inputs for this guy, and we'll just go to the red channel, and we'll just say min-max 0, 1. So now we can take the output of this guy, output red, into the alpha for that guy, min-max 0, 1. And now we basically have a file that does exactly what we want, that transitions between all three of those. So that is basically it. Now, obviously, to finish this off, I would do the exact same workflow to generate a map file that would then let me transition to another texture swatch, the fourth texture swatch for the top one. But the end result ends up looking like basically this. And that's exactly what we needed to get to. So that's just a quick example of how we can use alpha channels and a little bit of logic to create fix a few problems along the way to generate a really nice layered texture that's got high dynamic range imagery projected onto my reality captured environment that we can now use to light anything we want in a scene and have it be extremely accurate or very accurate. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch part 2 of my image-based texturing workflow. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't had time to go back to the area Journey to VR blog section, please do. We've got tons of videos that I've recorded on there, as well as a lot of written articles and interviews with customers that are doing amazing work in VR. So thank you so much for taking the time to check this all out. Cheers, everybody.